So now I have summary slides left, so I will go there. Sharing the slides here. So the internationalization was the main thing here. It's often called I-18N because it's I and 18 letters and N in the word internationalization. And it refers to the adapting program for different languages and regions and cultures. Localization is another term related, but not exactly the same. But different languages, it's not just they have the different texts that you must display. There are also other elements there. They have different capitalization rules, different text sorting rules, different rules for punctuation. You have also different scripts, Latin and Cyrillic, and then Arabic, and then of course the pictography-based languages are a very different world. And also different languages have different writing directions. And if you want to go on the advanced level of graphical user interfaces, then actually when the writing direction changes from left to right to left, then the whole culture kind of looks things from right to left. And this means also that in many cases the user interfaces should be arranged from right to left. Support for this varies, but for example, Android operating system supports this very well, so you can define optionally different layouts for these different writing orders, but it can also automatically update when you use the correct attributes. So you don't say left and right, you say start and end. So then it can lay out things automatically in either direction. And keyboard shortcuts is another and little bit tricky thing. When the language changes in the interface, should the keyboard shortcuts change or not? It's something that is good to be aware of. And then there are lots of these regional settings which are not linked really to language, but other things. So because of this, language and region are the two elements used in locale. So the number systems, as you have seen, are formatted differently. Currencies and how the values are written vary. If you think of like the US dollars, they put the dollar sign in the as part of the sum there in the beginning, and in Finland we put the euros in the end. And of course there are different units of measurement used across the globe. Postal address formats are somewhat different, and this is often annoying, at least for me, when the US-based systems assume that everybody has these same elements in their addresses. There are even different calendar systems, although this Gregorian calendar is quite pervasive and used in most computer systems. And there are also different keyboard layouts. The closest example for us, well, are perhaps France, and then of course Cyrillic keyboards are somewhat different. Also paper sizes are different in different cultures and so on. So there are lots of aspects to consider when you truly want to do this internationalization into your application. And you saw a couple of the most common ones, and where you have ready-made tools to take care of, so you don't need to yourself start to format the dates according to the different arrangements and rules and start figure them out yourself. How do they present dates in Australia, say? So local concept is important in localization. So it specifies the attributes so that this can happen automatically. So the language and the region, usually country, but there can be some other regions as well. Those are the two key elements, and the script and the calendar and some others can be optionally defined, at least in some systems. But usually it's the language and region pair that defines the locale. So JavaScript has this internationalization API, and it provides some tools. It provides converters or these formatters, formatting for formatting dates and numbers, which was my first example. So it's converting the, we saw how to convert currencies, for example, and percentages and all dates and times. And you have reasonable control there. It also provides a way, which I didn't show, but you can use this collator concept to do the sorting according to the culture-specific way. And the local concept is there. You have separate class for that, and definition says that this language and culture codes are what is specified in BCP 47. You can just Google and that and access it. And there are these ISO standards like 639 and various numbers, which include specify the same things, and these match. They are basically the same definitions available. So, and those are followed by all the real life systems that we have today. So date format, it can format a date object, and it can also give you the separate parts separately if you need to organize them yourself or want to organize them yourself. So it has this format to parts method, and you can go through these parts and you can check the type. And for example, you can check if the type is weekday, then you know, okay, this is now the weekday formatted whatever way you specified it to be formatted, and then you can put it where you want. And as said, so in the examples, you can give those attributes of how to present different elements that also specifies what to include in the output. And the number format can format your numbers and currency values and percentages, but also some other numeric values. Check the documentation when the need arises, that if it's already formatted, so you don't unnecessarily do it yourself. In React, the internationalization, it's not explicitly supported by React itself, and that's why, well, I used the JavaScript internationalization package, and then I just quickly did this translation with this bundle thing that I showed you. It's a suitable for simple application, but if you have a more complex application with lots of things to translate, and now I'm especially talking about translation, then you might want to check out the available libraries. There are lots of different internationalization libraries available to be used with React, and also other web frameworks. So it's probably not a good idea to start building your own internationalization framework, at least not before you have checked out the existing ones. For simple ones, like the example I gave, it's okay, but at some point it can start to get a little bit too complex and unnecessary work. But you can create a simple solution, so like I did. So using JavaScript or JSON file in the source directory can be the where you get the translation bundles. Using the word bundle because it's, for example, in Java is used this word, so it bundles together the different strings, and that bundle can then be used in the interface. And just using the language keys, codes as keys is one approach, simple approach. And the structure can contain not only the texts, but can contain like color definitions and references to image and icon files. Cultural specificity of icons, for example, is something to be aware of. Many of them might work, but some may not work in some specific culture. It can contain more complex data structures for complex settings. And if it's a JavaScript file, it can also contain code. So if you want to some formatting, for example, which needs some specific code to work differently in different cultures, if you do the bundle as a JavaScript file, then you can also include code in there and use the correct code as part of the same structure, which allows you to translate the things to different languages. And finally, accessibility is an important topic which I only briefly mentioned here and showed some basic things. The fundamental thing in web accessibility is to include textual information so that the screen readers and other accessibility technologies can provide information to the users. In addition to this textual format, one thing for the graphical design, visual design, is that the contrasts should be big enough and the user should be allowed to control the font sizes. And when possible, well, there are different tools like increased contrast. Contrast help many people. So not just creating the interface so that it's nice for your eyes, but also thinking of different eyes. But the textual content is important for screen readers, and WAI area, so this is the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Accessibility Initiative, who define both ways and requirements on how to make your applications accessible. So area is accessible rich internet applications. It's a standard way to do this. There is a link there. And Material UI component supports this area labels. You can see them all over the documentation. So I left them out in the earlier parts of this course in my examples to just cover them here now that I had some time to explain what they are, but definitely this is not a comprehensive description. But in the API you have for, I think each component, at least most of the components, you have the subsection accessibility, which describes the relevant aspects from the accessibility point of view. So definitely worth checking out at some point. Form control label is one way to do this, and where it's suitable, it's good way to do it. Some of the regular component attributes are also made available for screen readers. So if you put a label to the button, obviously that can be read out loud. And Canvas tag can contain descriptive content if you need to use Canvas. But of course, Canvas is not very accessible, so it should be used only when you absolutely need to dynamically draw content. And this is of course important because we don't want to exclude users from our applications, but it's also require went requirement for the public services. So every government and municipality, all these public actors, when they are providing services in the EU area, they are required to have accessible services, including physical accessibility, but also this in IT and usability accessibility. So all the web services the states and municipalities in EU are providing, they should be accessible. So developers should be aware of what it means to have an accessible system and what sort of tools and methods to use for that. So when they are participating in a project which develops some public service, at least you know that it's required and what it requires, and then it's perhaps not you who is responsible of this, but it might end up being you, so be prepared. And that is all in this summary I have and everything I have for this lecture. So of course I'm ready to take any questions you have at this point, and I think I failed to record the last demo, so I will probably go through that once more just to get the recording done. But thank you for your time, and remember that we don't have exercise session this Thursday because of the Easter break. So we will get back to this course. Well, the next exercise session, in the next exercise session next week's Thursday. And you can contact me, for example, by email.